My name is Jason Harpe. I am the Director of Cemetery Conservation as well as being a public historian for Richard Grubb and Associates, a full-service cultural resource management firm that specializes in archaeological surveys, architectural surveys, studies of all types, National Register nominations, local landmark reports.
As you know, this cemetery was moved at one point in 1988. It was moved from what is now the outer loop of 485. So the original site just really doesn't exist anymore. It's been bulldozed, it's been dug up, there's nothing there anymore. But they moved the cemetery to this location in 1988. Now, I've seen cemetery preservation done in a few different ways. In this case, they chose to preserve the stones lying down flat as opposed to putting them together again with cement or something and then placing them back upright. So what would be the benefits of doing it this way versus doing it the other way?
One of the downsides of doing this is, it's facing up. So it's taking, rain, hail, sleet, snow, all on the face of the stone. One perspective with laying them flush is if you don't know exactly the best way to stand them, it's best just to leave them alone as is. Same thing with this. I will tell you, one of the things that people hear me say a lot is, you have to keep in mind this thing came out of the ground and its whole purpose in life is to get back into the ground. That's just my perspective over the years of seeing all these. From the time that they were made, I'm sure this wasn't in their mind when they did it, but because of the dimensions, if you've got a very, very tall, thin marker, it's almost doomed to failure. Because even if it's specifically what we call a ground supported tablet, the earliest grave markers they did not use concrete. So this is what we would call a ground supported tablet. It was originally set directly into the ground.
And I know from the records, a lot of these were found several inches beneath the soil when they excavated in the first place. This one, I believe we have a photo of it leaning against a tree when they found it. And that's from, I believe 1979 is when that photo was taken. And it was still whole, so it could be that somewhere in the 9 years following between that initial survey. Yeah, it might have been damaged, or it may have even been damaged in transit. Now these field stones that they kind of threw in here, they don't seem to really correlate to anything. Same with the headstones. We know from the GPR radar that the headstones aren't really directly over any of the bodies.
Yeah, and that happens. It's just sort of a case-by-case situation. And if a cemetery if people have been exhumed and reinterred in another location, unless you have solid documentation as to, okay, you know who this person is, and you create some sort like a systematic approach to, we know these remains came out of this person's burial shaft where the excavation was done. But if you have a grave marker like you mentioned just a few minutes ago, that in 1979 was leaning against a tree, it's displaced from the person's remains, so it's really difficult to try to excuse the phrase, but piece that back together, both with the stone and its location.
This headstone, I believe, is the reason that the entire cemetery was saved in the first place. This is Maria Polk's headstone. I believe Maria Polk was the grandmother of James K. Polk. A lot of cemeteries, historic or not, aren't always saved. What could be some reasons for saving some cemeteries versus other cemeteries?
So it depends. I mean, some of the cemeteries, they could have someone or people buried in the cemetery who have some sort of almost a transcendental importance in the state or the national level, that like this, someone involved, Department of Transportation, Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, says these individuals and these grave markers meet certain criterion that make they rise to a level of importance that needs to be saved. And saying that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that folks who weren't significant on a local, state, or national level, their burial locations aren't worthy of preservation. That's not what I'm saying, but there are certain cemeteries that do have some significance.
Yeah, and I guess it's unfortunate, but we can't save everything that's historic, or there would be no progress.
You're exactly right.
Is it ever possible to read headstones like this that are in such bad condition in a way that's non-destructive to the stone itself?
Sure. This one, what I can see, this is literally biogrowth here. The engraving is pretty good. The inscriptions are pretty good. but I think the only way you're going to be able to read this in its entirety is to remove this biogrowth. What you can do with stones that are deteriorated to the point where you just can't read them, there are a number of methods you can use. Just wetting it with water, you can use flashlights, you can use a reflector like photographers use.
I wanted to show you this one too. So we've actually flipped this one over thinking it was upside down.
And there's nothing under?
Yeah, but there's no visible epitaph on either side. Do you ever find just blank grave markers? Yeah. Okay, that's kind of what we were suspecting. It just doesn't seem like there's any remnants of lettering anywhere.
To me, it looks like this could be the lower half.
It might be.
Of a tall, what we call a ground supported tablet, like the one over there. So we come across this a lot. It's possible that the missing portion of this, I don't know, it could have been missing before it was relocated here. It's hard to tell sometimes, and I know it's frustrating to folks because you want to know who this is, for a number of reasons. Out of respect, you want to do what's right by them, but it's just missing. So you may never find it, and that's part of the story of this place.
I suppose it's better than no grave marker at all, which is the reality of probably a lot of the folks who were buried here, being enslaved as well. A lot of times the enslaved didn't have a grave marker, or maybe they just had a field stone, which could be what some of these represent. I mean, we just don't know.
And you want to have stuff there, and you want to know. And so it tells you something about this place, but the absence of things also tells you about this place too. It's part of the story. Let's not get so consumed with things that we can see and we know, but we're confused about what they are. What's not there? Why is it not there? And that's, try to understand that as well and do research on that. It's part of the full story of the full story of the location. One thing I will tell you, since I've seen, while we're out here, why not? I don't know if you noticed the older stuff. The older grave markers, they have, so some folks call them head and shoulders. It's the grave marker type. So it's got that center, it's like semi-arched or semicircular, not semicircular, but arched. That's called a tympanum. And then the on the outside of it, there's called caps. So that's why they call them head and shoulders. But that's an early grave marker form. And as soon as I walk into a cemetery, I can tell literally time periods just based on the grave marker type. So it's just
and then you can attribute it probably to Bigham or Cavaney.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm a fan of the Bighams, but I've done a lot of work in cemeteries where the Caveneys and Crawfords work is still there.